Good afternoon, everyone, and thank you all for joining us today. I'm Evan Hendershot. I'm part of the marketing team here at ProTech. And for those of you who are new to these webinars, ProTech is an association management provider that leverages the Microsoft ecosystem, Azure Cloud, and Power Platform to create an extremely feature-rich AMS for trade and professional associations. We also host these monthly webinars, and this month I'm excited to introduce Benjamin Muscolino, Breezio's president and CEO, as he explains how opening your online community to the outside world can bolster member engagement, increase non-dues revenue, drive prospecting, reinvent content strategy, and elevate your hybrid events in this newfound virtual era. But before I bring him in, please note that all attendees will receive a recording of this webinar later this evening, and we encourage you to ask as many questions as you'd like, and we'll circle back to those at the end. So without further delay, let's get things going.
Evan, thanks a lot for the intro. Really excited to be here with you guys, and we've got a pretty large crowd, so excited to be able to share some of this. And so we're going to talk about boosting member and non-dues revenue in a virtual world with open communities. And this will be the only reading that I'll do off of slides today, or virtually all, but things have changed, and community strategy can help, and it's playing a bigger part than I think ever. And are we changing for now or for good? And we'll touch back on that when we talk about virtual event strategy and kind of the role that community can play in that as well. So other than the rush on toilet paper that we've had, the data that we've been collecting has significantly shifted, and I'm really excited to speak from our perspective today on what that looks like right now. So for those of you that are on the webinar that actually know me, sometimes I can set a land speed record for talking. And so I'm going to try and take my time and keep things compartmentalized today to a few key areas. We're going to jump around a little bit, and I think there's going to be some common themes through this, data being one of them. But we're going to talk about community data and where that comes from, and try and think about that a little differently. We're going to talk about membership and non-dues revenues, and essentially this hybrid event model and this revenue stream that is new to us, and the fact that I think we should really sustain that. And the fact that we can grow our membership in this time. It's an amazing opportunity to leverage community, especially for growing membership and growing revenue as we come out of this. So I am Ben Muscolino. I'm the CEO of Breezio, one of the market leading online community platforms. I took over as CEO toward the end of last year, and we're coming off of a quarter in Q2 this year where it is our best quarter in company history. So I'm really excited to be here to kind of talk with you guys today about what I'm seeing in the market. We're going to talk about some customer stories. And this is how you would normally see me, set in Seinfeld's apartment. That is my usual Zoom background for virtually every meeting that I do. Really excited that not only were we a sponsor of ProTech's user conference this year, but they're a certified partner. And so really excited to be working on several projects with them and have some shared customers with them. So thanks for having us. So about Breezio, I don't want to spend a ton of time talking about our product. I'm going to show a little bit of it in here, but we're going to go light on that. We're going to try and stay on strategy. My goal for these is always, I want you guys to walk away with a little bit of a catalyst or a way to flip the coin and look at something, at least one thing differently at your organization. And so just jot that down as a goal. So as far as community and Breezio is concerned, I've been in the association and nonprofit tech market for some time now as a consultant working for an AMS company many years ago in a previous life, and really impressed with what Breezio was doing when I came across them as a consultant. And to keep it short, ultimately, we are redefining how online engagement is happening by having engagement within content, not just around it. And some of the content publishing tools that we have and group management tools that we have are unlike anything else on the market. So, if you're interested, reach out. So yeah, not too much of a Breezio pitch here. You're going to spend the whole hour with me. So if you need anything following this, we'd love to talk with you about Breezio. So let's talk just for a second about the fact that data has their own ideas of things this year, and start things off light. The relative importance of a few things so far here in 2020, from coffee to sweatpants to toilet paper. Toilet paper had a weird run there, right? We ran out of it, and then really we didn't. it was all, we had a big artificial rush on that, kind of funny. Shaving, alcohol legitimately is up well over 70% in consumption. So that's an interesting rate here in COVID to monitor. But let's get back to some of the systems in our market. So AMS didn't budge, right? It remains a very constant level of importance within the organization because it is the system of record for a lot of things that we're doing. And live events obviously plummeted, right? We can't get together. It's funny. I had a friend say in a different webinar recently that tape is going to be the big, run on things once they start reopening conventions and things like that. In Vegas and all these other places, they're going to be taping everything off, ripping it up and taping it down for the next event. So kind of funny. But video conferencing, webinars, community, e-commerce, a lot of these things have taken different pivot points during this pandemic and things that are going on right now. And of course, alcohol and sweatpants, the demand continues for that. And I think can't add anything to that. So let's get into this. Let's talk about open community, and let's just hit this right on the head. I'm going to talk about a few customer examples. We're going to talk about New York City Bar Association and APPA, two clients of ours. And then we're actually going to talk about ASPB, another really great customer of ours, which is the American Society of Plant Biology. So I'll just touch on these examples real quick. So as this pandemic started to hit, we got calls from some of our customers that said, we want to use community in different ways. And New York City Bar Association was really only using community for these committees that they were running, and committee members, dynamically populated into these groups for collaboration, document sharing, and all of these things that they do. And they said, look, we're not using this as a full member community. We're using these more as collaborative groups. And so they opened up a group on the fly and said, look, how's our integration looking with our AMS, and how easy is this to turn on? And I said, go ahead and turn it on, and let's create this member-only group. And we did it in essentially a day. And so what they were able to do is start taking a look at conversations that were happening amongst customers and that they had kind of siloed into these committees before, and a great amount of data so that they could see that there were some members that were weighing in on topics that were outside of their committee focus. And so that was a really great piece of intel and data for New York City Bar to have by opening it up to all of their members. Now, a typical community for an association is a members-only community. All members have access. And then we've got our committees and our boards and some of these things that are private or hidden in the community. Well, APPA had a very traditional rollout of their community. And what happened was we got a call from Kristen over at APPA. Shout out to Kristen, one of our favorite customers. And she said, look, we've got people in our industry that are looking to us as the people that can tell them, how this is impacting our market and our industry. And whether they're members or non-members, we want to create a space for members and non-members to be able to come and consume our COVID-19 updates. And how are we doing this? And so they opened up a group. Now, they still had to have a profile record in their AMS. So picture that, right? They've got a big influx of data, non-member data, of people saying, we want access to this group. We want to be able to ask questions on this group, even though we're not a member. And then you get to start seeing how are some of these non-members, how active are they? Should they be members? Could we be involving them in different ways? And that's a theme I'm going to come back to a couple of times. So kudos to both of these organizations. And I think that a lot of people just need to realize that a community doesn't have to be a closed off environment. Parts of it can be, right? But then APPA just rolling out a non-members group that they create a profile and then get access to this group, I think is a great industry value, not just a member value that they're providing. And so I wanted to share that story with you. So let's go take a look at ASPB. So what's unique and cool about Plante, which is powered by American Society for Plant Biologists, is they have this community at plante.org that is open. And what I mean by open is right here, I'm on their page and it says, sign up, log in, which would mean I'm not logged in right now, right? And I don't have to sign up, and I can see what's going on. I can see upcoming events. I can see their event calendar, videos they have embedded, comments and discussions that are going on among other members. And if I take another look at this, I can go into the resources section and I can actually take a look at documents that they've published out, discussions that are happening, and in this case, collections, which is referred to in a lot of ways as kind of a light learning. Certainly don't want to call it a learning management software, but it's the ability to collect content that's been published into the system into a curriculum or a syllabus that say, hey, I want you to consume this data in this order. And so we're able to go in and take a look at their collections. And so here's this 2019 Planté favorites. And so what they did is they published a bunch of things in here that are kind of the best of 2019, right? The most viewed Planté community collections, the most active discussions, all of those types of things. And then when I click into one of these and I scroll down, sure enough, if I want to interact with any of this, I have to log in or sign up. And so they do an amazing job of prospecting through community, because what they're able to do is put tons of content out there that the search engines can pull that's relevant to their industry, that members and non-members are sharing. And then what they're able to do is see, how are our members involved? What badges are they earning? How are they interacting? And then of our non-members, who are the most active of our non-members? You're going to see, and this is exactly what they see. They see people that create a profile just to create one post, right? Or just to reply to one comment. And then you have these other folks that create a profile. You had no idea they existed. They're not in your database now. They're not in your community. Obviously, they come in, they sign up, and they become one of your most active community members. And we need to put them in a funnel somewhere. Are they a donor? Should they be attending events? Should they be a content presenter at one of our events? Even if they're not the exact, membership prospect for us. So gaining that data by really putting content in front of people and saying, look, we want to share with you what our community is doing, but you can't partake in this unless you share your information with us and let us know who you are. And so these are some really good examples of different layers of open community. Planté really at one extreme, where other than some of their committees and a couple member-only groups and a board of directors group, most of their community is wide open, and they've got a lot of traffic, and they've got Google Analytics hooked up to it, along with data analytics tools, along with the reporting and analytics that we have in the platform. So really fun to watch, how these organizations have been able to grow their data and grow their organizations and prospect through community. So let's take a look at this, right? This is the shift, right? We've got content over here and content over here, and which of it do we need a login for? And so that is really just the question that we need to be asking ourselves. And we're going to talk a little bit more about the path that people take through content, but associations are in a very unique position right now. And I really think that we need to, take a look at our community strategy, our content strategy, and really bring those things together like we haven't before. So, and again, going back to that searchable content, this is what's really important, right? If it's a private community and you're on the board of directors and you publish something there, that's not going to be searchable by the search engines or other people posting a link somewhere or anything like that. If you don't have access to it, you don't have access to it. But where data and content really come together is where we need to take another look at incentivizing the behavior that we want, and really thinking about what is our ultimate goal. Setting goals is something that we're going to talk about toward the end as well, but it's really, really important. And so if we take a look at the content user journey, in a lot of ways, people spend a lot of time on social media. So in some ways, they may be serving the public social media sites about or groups there about what's going on. Right? What are people talking about? Let me ask a question there to see what other resource people point to. And then they hit the web, right? And we surf and we surf and we surf. And it's 2020. I could spin up 20 WordPress sites by the time we got off this meeting today, right? It's really easy for anybody to publish anything out. But this is where associations really need to recognize that they can be capitalizing right now. The associations are the authority on some of these topics. So the scarier things get, I hate to say that, we're motivated by fear, but the scarier things get, or the more shifty things get around us in this weird economy that we have right now with the pandemic happening around us, people are looking at these links and in their mind, these are less credible. Let's find the .org. Let's find the I dare say .gov, right? let's find some of these more credible resources and let's go to these and get our information from there. And so that's where these associations need to have more content out there that are being indexed, that are able to be researched and searchable. And then let's pull these people into the community where conversation around and within some of that content may be happening, and allow them to give you their information in that regard. So, and that's through, your AMS sign up page. Maybe it's directing your community if you've got a standalone community, or maybe you've got some non-member lower barrier of entry to be able to create a profile. And then in order to create a member profile, you do have that normal sign up process through your AMS. There's a lot of different combinations of ways to do this, but think about this content user journey. It's really important for you guys to be able to take a look at how and why and where we're going to capture some of that data. And this is really, again, this shift that we need to be thinking about. And I put community in parentheses because I think that we're talking about it from the context of community today, but really a lot of what we've done traditionally is let's sell people something and then give them access to this content. And that's a traditional way of doing things. And I think that there are some things that certainly could and should still be sold that way, but we really need to think about flipping that around. Let's allow the content. So I've led several of those other sessions on engagement scoring and what those funnels look like, right? If you want to turn someone into a sustaining donor, right? You take a look at someone what is the formula, right? What are the data points that go into that funnel? Is it someone that's attended 2 or more events in the last 3 years, sat on a committee, and donated at least twice as one-time gifts over the last 3 years? That is the formula. We put those data points into a funnel. We put certain messaging in front of them, and now we have that funnel of people to convert, right? We have to think about right now the way that content's being consumed. We need to funnel people in using our content, using the technology platforms we have like Community to allow them to then become a member or register for that event or give us the data so we can get them to be a donor. There are so many different ways that we want to engage with people. And a lot of times people think, well, they have to do this one thing first, and then we'll let them do all these other things. It's like, no, let's let them consume a lot of what we have going on and put them into these funnels based on the data that we get from that. And let's start converting into the products that we want to. So just think about that path when you're talking about your data and your content strategy and your community strategy and how much of that you may expose to members and non-members. So let's keep moving through this, right? And let's refer back and let's circle back to these customer examples, because this is just a point I really want to make. I've said it in a roundabout way, and I just want to hammer it home. We've got our most valuable members. And it's funny, being on the consulting side for so long, we ask, who are your most involved members, right? And it's always a really funny thing when you're on the other side of the boardroom table, because you see the association staff making eye contact with each other and maybe roll their eyes. And we all know there's that over-involved member in a few areas, right? And who are these most valuable members, though? Who is the most vocal on the community? Who helps us with membership recruitment, right? And then really taking a look at who are most valuable non-members and really put together some data around that. Or again, going back to, and I'm a retiring sales addict, so I'll just say, like, incentivize the behavior that you want, right? Let's figure out, if they're going to be non-members, how can we make them valuable non-members for our organization? Let's get their information. Let's get them involved in some way. And let's make sure that we're measuring not just the people within our network, but the people from outside our network that may have a foot in the door. And are they holding the door open for other people? Are they waiting to come in themselves, and what are they waiting for? So let's be really cognizant of our most valuable members versus our most valuable non-members, and taking a look at that. And community is an amazing way to gauge and engage non-members in your industry. So the rise of the virtual events. Let's switch gears just a little bit and talk about virtual events. We're going to talk about community's part in that. And let's acknowledge the change in perspective, right? Because this is really important to make sure that we are making the changes that we need to, not only to react to what's going on, but to proactively grow our organizations I personally, I look at this and I'm not only am I super proud of our industry, but I'm very proud of some of our customers. They've taught me some new ways in which people are using our community to run virtual events. But I do think too that for a long time, people would look at associations, and I've been working in the association for a long time, association space for a long time. And I think that some people would say, okay, we're going to plan a virtual event, and, the staff might say, great, we've got a million things going on. Let's plan to do that, for the first time in 2022. And then the pandemic hit, and 2 months later, people are rolling out virtual events. So really a hand to all of the folks that we've worked with and really the industry as a whole. It's been a ton of fun to watch, but we need to make sure that we are paying attention to drilling in on some of these specific data elements. So this is an arbitrary cartoon of what, events used to look like. And we've got people talking, close to each other, walking close to each other, pointing at things from arm's length. And now we've got this couple over here that's quarantined together, and their buddy over here that they're usually on tour with at these association events. But he doesn't live with them. He didn't quarantine with them. So he's got to say hi from across the room now. This is the reality of what we're going through and what we're going to see when we get back to in-person events. And so we've always had this in-person versus virtual, a webinar versus this size event. Well, now everything's virtual at the moment, and we've got this huge opportunity to really embrace in-person and virtual. And it's really a lot of fun if you think about it, because I was actually just talking to an association customer today that said, well, we normally have about 300 people that attend this conference, and we have 700 people that registered for our virtual event this year. And I said, great, you've now got a ton of prospecting data and people that want to attend this event but weren't going to attend because you've been running this event for 25 years. You've never had more than 300 people. And so now the idea of having a virtual event for those other 400, let's just, use easy numbers, right? Those 400 that are virtual still outnumber the in-person. So have your in-person event, and let's recognize that we have a virtual event that we can now offer in parallel, which all things being equal, when we're back to having in-person events now, we have an additional revenue stream in this virtual event. And so it's been a ton of fun to watch organizations put themselves in a position to not only react in a great way to what's happening now, but position themselves for revenue growth, to allow them to pursue their missions and provide advocacy and, fundraise for their causes and make an impact on the world. And so it's really a lot of fun. And here's just something, and I'm not gonna push a lot of brands while we're in here today. But there is a couple of brands that I want to bring up, and one specifically over on the left. And it's not because they're the only ones that do it, but they're just a prime example of somebody that has done a very good job of not only marketing to me through retargeting, but to selling into the association market. And so I want to bring Feather up because I think that this is where we are from a data perspective, right? One of the things that Feather will help you do is they'll help you retarget traffic. So all of these people that maybe ended up on your, again, content. So you get these people sucked in with your open community content, your website content, and all of this credible content that your association or nonprofit has in your industry. And if you're now marketing a virtual event versus an in-person event, you have the opportunity to now take some of that traffic that may not have attended your in-person event. So maybe let's not market to some of these people, but this is a virtual event. People can attend from anywhere. So let's use retargeting tools that are out there, right? And let's gain some of that data. The lower barrier of entry for a virtual event, let's get some of that non-member data. Let's get more of that member updated, refresh data for people that maybe haven't engaged with us in a little while. Some of the other things to take a look at too, the paradigm of kind of social learning, LMS, meshing with community is really something that I've tracked very closely. We've got some great LMS partners we've integrated with over here, and that's a lot of fun. And the idea that you can present content through community to satisfy things like CAEs. Anyone that is a CAE or is trying to earn or renew their CAE today, congratulations, because you're earning one today, right? Through ProTech's ability to offer those as a content leader and thought leader in the market. Facebook advertising, this is funny, in the same light as Feather. We're going to look back in 10 years and we're all going to laugh and think, man, we should have spent a lot more money on social media advertising when we had the chance. Because I personally believe it's just going to continue to get more expensive, and that is an opportunity, especially because the barrier of entry to engage with some of these people in virtual events and in virtual communities is a lot lower, and it's really through the computer and through mobile now. So you have the ability to go out there and I think make great use of your budget to go find non-members and stay in front of non-members and geographically target and demographically target. So some really good things. And then community, I think it's been actually a ton of fun during the quarantine, and we've enjoyed quarantining, even though COVID, obviously a terrible global pandemic. The silver lining for us has been very good for business, and we've been able to empower organizations to be able to connect more effectively virtually. And it's really been a fun conversation to have people that we were talking to at the end of last year that said, hey, end of next fiscal year, let's talk about this again. And then they call us back a month or two later and say, hey, this is going on. How fast can we stand up a community? What does that rollout strategy look like? And it's not painful. And there's a lot of data insights and data that they have an opportunity to gather during this time. So a lot of fun to take a look at that. So, and I just touched on this before, and I want you to be thinking about this as it relates to virtual events, because there is this cross section of social learning, of community and LMSs, and how do these things work together? Because really, before we were, let's offer this course virtually, let's have a webinar, let's launch this to our LMS, and then, okay, let's have this in-person learning in these sessions, and these are somehow different. They're not now. They are the same. And you need to be thinking about that as we ratchet up this hybrid event model, as we come out of this, middle of next summer, who knows? These things are going to live in parallel for a long time, and it's really going to help our businesses. So, let's make sure that we keep this image in front of us and make sure we're thinking about it and talking about it. So just in terms of putting a face with a name here, in terms of changing the perspective, recognizing the perspective that we have. In person, this lady's having a great time. She's got her coffee. They're outside a session. They're hanging out. He's got the program in his hand, all physical, in person. And then we got this guy over here that's got, his monitor and laptop up, and he's waving to people the same way I am to you guys right now. There's a big shift in how this is happening right now. And this is from an attendee perspective. Now, let's think about for a second the sponsor perspective, right? This is me at a conference last year taking a selfie in front of one of our booths. And this is with Sue from Illinois, ASBO. Shout out to Sue, great customer. And this is great. Like, we're taking selfies in front of our booths. We're having a great time. There's a logo bag people get to take home with them. And so the way that this has shifted is now all these people are online. We've got this virtual experience. Imagine this landing page right here as a conference, right? And you've got, what are the discussions happening during the conference? And this is the advertisement up in the top right-hand corner of this right here. Here are the upcoming sessions within this event today. And so, as a sponsor, I've got this tote bag they can take. I've got my backdrop. I've got my pictures I take with me for social media and promoting our company. Now we've got ads, right? Now we've got ads and visibility and some of these other things. And so taking a look at what does that value look like to make sure that you can keep value high for your organization's community can play a huge part in that. So let's keep going through this, and let's just take a look briefly at like a Breezio group page. So I'm just going to kind of spin through quickly some of the features that I wanted to highlight here. So this admin brandable microsite. So as an admin, you can go in and just click edit here, and you can upload a virtual background image, whatever colors you want to, right there on the fly, really easy. You can create these sessions over on the right. You have an event description that you can add that's got, any formatting really that is supported in there. You want to embed a video there, go ahead. You want to have bullets or any other formatting in there, go right ahead. The brandability up here of having this background image and then also an image-driven group is a great feature as well. And it looks great on mobile because it's not all text. And then we've got the ability to have your session list, and that can be built right out in here. It can be dynamic from your AMS, and pulling all these things in. So again, this is just a community. This is a group within your overarching community, and it is essentially functioning as an event, a collaborative virtual event microsite. And so the ability to have the dynamic attendee list, right? And have all of the members of that group, which essentially are attendees, and having those people dynamically sync. If they, and I know that ProTech can do this, but all of the other AMSs can do it as well. If you're able to, as you're able to take those registrations, whether it's through an event registration third party that feeds into your AMS, or whether it's on an AMS page itself, as they register there, they automatically and dynamically get put into this specific group. It's a very simple integration point. All of the community platforms in the market probably have that. But the way that we lay this out to be able to promote your association and sponsors as well, and the idea too, there's an ad serving module built right in. So we're going to talk in a second about the inventory of that, but if you can put 5 or 6 or 8 or 10 of those in here, maybe you have an ad up here, you can serve ads in several different places, and start to monetize, what this event opportunity looks like for you. So let's talk about content for a second, and then we'll continue to talk through this virtual event piece and how communities can help support that. So right here, we've got what I think is really the most advanced content tools in the market from a community perspective, hands down. I would love for anybody to tell me that we don't. It's so much fun. You can copy and paste a URL. It embeds a video right in here. And so you've got this video. This is a ProTech video where they're talking about some integrations that they have. And this is the Office 365 integration at this moment. So you have time-stamped Q&A in here. So here's what we're seeing. We have associations that spin up a group. They link it to an event in their AMS. All of their registrants sync dynamically. So we now have this virtual event space in the community. And now we've got people putting up pre-recorded session content on YouTube or Vimeo. And keep in mind, you don't have to make it public. You can have it up there in public, but have the URL hidden. Very easy to do. So you can have this content up there. It's pre-recorded. You can have in-portal events as your sessions, and that kind of event list that I showed you. And this is exactly, it almost didn't occur to me. And then I saw all of our customers starting to use it like this, and they called and they said, hey, we want to tweak our integration point with our AMSs for speakers, and we want to allow organizational profiles in here. I'm like, yeah, of course, let's do it. So we've got time-stamped collaboration in here so that people can come in and have Q&A, live Q&A, and the actual session leaders can be in there doing live Q&A with the people that are virtually consuming this content that you've uploaded. So it's really a ton of fun to see how our customers have been using community to support virtual events and virtual engagement this year. And again, keep in mind, right, if you have a members only community, all we have to do is take a look at those permission sets, and a lot of it's baseline and set up right the way you want. You just have to go in and say, this group in here is going to have access to any individual type, whether member, non-member, sponsor, whatever, as long as they register for that event in the AMS. So again, being able to take a look at how you're sectioning off who has access to what, and as well as, and I actually don't have a slide in here to talk about it, but you're going to have organizational profiles. And one way to look at that is, setting up another permission set or another role for exhibitors or sponsors. Maybe anybody can reach out to them and message them, but maybe you don't give sponsors the ability to reach out to everyone else, right? That's always that fear. If we give them the list, or if we give them access to our member base, are they going to bother them, right? Are they going to solicit too much? Sure. Create a new a profile that has a permission set that's unique to those. And so community is a really fun way to be supporting some of these initiatives we have going on. So here's a quick screenshot just to show you how targeted some of this can get. So we're in our ad serving module right here. And right here, you say what type of ad you want, and we want to put a link behind it. Here's the location. We want to put it into groups. Okay, which group do you want this ad to be on? Great. We're going to put it right here on this one. This is the link that we wanted to send to. A little shout out to Delcor right there. All the product companies in the market take note. Be good to Delcor. And then, we want to target, inventory, monetize, and repeat, right? So this is really simple. Putting together an inventory of ads in a community software is not hard. If you have multiple, if you want to put a Delcor one in there and then an Ellipsis Partners and then, whatever else. You just put them in there and they rotate through. I mean, it's easy. So let's take a look at this target inventory, monetize, repeat. I think that developing an inventory to turn some of this into money is very, very important, right? And this is just like a quick shorthand version of this. So you trust me, don't email me afterwards and say, I want that example. You don't, okay? You're going to do a better job if you sit down and spend 10 minutes on it. But this is what we're talking about. What are the groups, right? Monetizing not just your in-person events, but your community as a whole right now when, our budgets are shifting, right? And people's income is shifting from one thing to another. There are groups like Cvent, funny example, right? Their on-site solutions are probably getting hammered right now, and yet people are running more events than they ever had before because of the amount of virtual events, and so they're selling tons of software. So you want to think about what is the inventory of things that I can sell, right? And what are these types of things, and how many of them do we want to offer? And so put an inventory together and say, this is how many spots I have to sell, the same way that you might have with your in-person events. If you have an exhibit hall, you only have so many events, only so many booths to sell. There's only so many 10 by 10s. So people can buy a 20 by 20 or a 40 by 40, but it's just limiting the amount of inventory that you have, right? So put together an inventory. It doesn't have to be real complicated. That's why I put this example up here. It's just Excel formulas, right? Put it together, set some goals around some of these things, and then really turn around and monetize community, virtual events. And let's not forget too, the more content that you expose, now we're going to come full circle with this. The more content that you expose, the more traffic you're going to get, the more search you're going to be involved in, the more non-member data you're going to have, the more non-member traffic you're going to have, which is going to bolster traffic. If you're just getting member traffic, then that limits it to a certain subset. You may be able to sell your advertising or your sponsorships for more if there's more people in there, more page views, more click-throughs, right? And even go as far as saying, you know what, no, we don't want your landing page. We will set up a landing page that captures any click-throughs for you. So then now you can start to measure metrics within your community to share with them conversions. And now you're talking about a really savvy revenue formula that, look at groups like howtogeek.com, right? How to Geek is like a techie how-to blog and with not a big group of people, and they have like millions and millions of users and visitors. And because they're very good at pulling that content in and pulling users in and engaging them for data and then monetizing it with, you go to their website and they've got ad buys from Microsoft and Amazon and HP. It's incredible. So I'm not saying that you should be selling advertising space to HP and Amazon, but this is not as hard as everyone wants to make it out to be. And I truly think that you could sit down and put an inventory together for your organization that could be game-changing revenue for you guys, especially as we come out of this pandemic. You are going to have additional revenue opportunities that help save your organization or helps compensate for your organization, which later are really just going to help propel your organization. And so I'm excited for everybody that is spending any time thinking about and talking about these things right now. So let's just talk for a second about what do we do then, right? We have no data and we have all the data. Well, once we have all the data, hoarding it does nothing. So sit down and put goals together, put together your inventories. Think about the what I like to say are the QBQs. What is the question behind the question, right? If I want to sell advertising for this much money, or I want to get this many non-members to sign up so that we can do this, where are we getting them from, and how do we get them, and what are we giving them to get that? So take a look at that and set some goals. So let's focus on some of these takeaway questions here. Let's talk about data just for a second. And this is going back to the beginning. This is one of the only other times I'm going to read off the screen just for a second. So what data do I want from this event, right? Let's talk about events. What do we want from our community? What do we want from whatever platform we're engaging people onto? And how do we capture data and where? Community is that new frontier for prospecting data, for advertising dollars and non-dues revenue. it is the new frontier for virtual event management, right? And you're going to see, I mean, we're talking with some virtual event companies right now about integration points. And, you know, even if we have this virtual reality world, which is kind of cool, we've got AMS Fest coming up this week that we're sponsoring, and we've got like I've got an avatar that he has hair, so I may go in and update that. But, you know, how are we collaborating with a good user experience around virtual event spaces that may be out of our communities, and then complementing that with communities, right? And then engagement, right? What are the on-site engagement points that we have, and what does that look like? And what do we want virtual engagement points to look like? And how do we use community to leverage that? And is it member, non-member? Do we even within a virtual event, do we have member and non-member engagement in private areas for them to go talk? So just questions you want to be asking yourself as we evolve this simple yet complicated strategy. And what forms of engagement will be missing in the event model. So make sure we're poking holes in some of those things. And how are we setting goals? You're right. Where are the revenue opportunities? Where were the revenue opportunities when we were on site? And who are they with? And what did they get for that? And how did we set those when we pivoted to virtual? And what role does community serve in it? Community may not be the end all be all of value that you're going to give to sponsors and exhibitors and things like that, but it certainly can be a huge element of value. And so I wanted to make sure we touched on that a little bit today to make sure that you guys understood how you could potentially be looking at that, and then make sure that we are taking a look at that inventory of revenue opportunity. So this came up on a webinar recently, and I have a feeling a million people have said this before. Julie Shulo from Association Analytics said this on a previous webinar that I ran with her, and then Reggie Smith from AHIMA just said this, but associations tend to be data rich, but information poor. So walk away, write that down right now, right? Let's make sure that we're not just collecting data, but deciding what we're going to do with that data. And more importantly, let's be very intentional about our community data, right? If we're going to give people free access to a community page within our industry, there is a happy medium between lowering the barrier of entry so that we get their name and email to engage with them, and finding out their organization, finding out, what their education might be, finding out other demographics, and making sure that we're building out robust profiles so that we can market to those people later and not just end up in their inbox with no context around how we're marketing to some of these people. Community can be one of the greatest marketing tools that we're going to find 2020 and beyond. And terrible timing and really a terrible thing that's going on with this pandemic. But this is the time to harness tools like this and make sure that we're taking our community strategy very seriously and how we're harvesting data from it and what we're then going to do with that. What is the information that we're then inferring or learning from that community information that we're getting? So let's do a quick recap. How are we doing on time? Do we have any questions that have come? In fact, I think I saw a few questions come in. So we'll do some key takeaways, and then maybe I'll kick it back over to ProTech to see if they want to jump in with some questions that might have come in. I cannot do this and monitor questions at the same time I see the chat come in. If you do have questions, we didn't put any polls in here, which I like to do sometimes, but please feel free to chime in. We're going to have a little bit of time left over, probably 10 minutes for Q&A. Would love to hear from anyone. And I'm never as short on opinions as I am in stature. So here are our 4 takeaways here. Open community can yield data and information. Okay, it's number 1. Plain and simple. Think about your community strategy. Think about the lack of community strategy, right? I think it's interesting. I think that there are some groups in our market that did such a good job, and we all know who they are, bringing community to the market, educating the market on what community can do for them, and then it became a foregone conclusion, we need a community. Everybody needs a community, right? I don't disagree. As the CEO of Breezio, I hope you come, work with us on community. But I think that strategy has started to lack internally, and so we're paying for actual community consultants or community managers. And the reality is, it starts inside the organization around your goals and setting goals around some of these things. And if you want to enlist help to do some of those things, by all means do it. But I think that, putting a community in place and not overcomplicating your strategy, but setting some goals around data and the information that you want to get from that data, and then responsibly selling that, sharing that with integrated systems is something that, take your time, don't overcomplicate it, sit down and do it, and you will not be sorry. Prospecting for events and members. We've got Feather, we've got non-member groups, we've got social media advertising, we've got all these things that bring us back to people looking at our content online, which might be open community content, which they may then want to interact with because they see others interacting with it. And then we break down that wall of them sharing information with us, right? Or logging in so that we can track their engagement if they're already an existing member or have a record with us. And this opportunity that I'm just really excited for everybody about this community side, hybrid events, of running in-person events and virtual events. I'm so impressed with what everyone's done. I'm so impressed with what our customers have done in running virtual events in our community really effectively, from importing articles and videos to collaboration within those things. It's been a ton of fun to watch, sharing out all the materials for the session leaders and content leaders, PowerPoints and things like that. Really fantastic. So let's keep an eye on those new revenue streams. Just because they're replacing in-person events now, let's make sure that we keep those going and make sure we're serving that market that wasn't going to attend our in-person to begin with, and let it help our organizations thrive moving forward. And use your content to your advantage. And just remember, excuse me, the content product slide that I have, right? I'm not saying that that's wrong, but we need to flip that, right? We need to flip that and make sure that we're using content as the funnel and the catch to get people into our products. We can't just treat our content as a product all the time, especially when you go in and you do audits on your content and what's buried and what's not being surfaced. And you'll see, gosh, this has a ton of information in it. If we had just had a little bit less information, this piece of resource would be surfaced much more often. But we generate tons and tons of content. And so let's make sure that we're being intentional about what we want to put behind a member wall or in a community behind a community wall, excuse me, and what we don't, because you may be missing an opportunity to grow your organization's footprint by exposing a little bit more than you might have in the past. So this is where I will kind of defer back to ProTech and see if there are any questions or discussion that we can have at this point.
Awesome. Well, thanks again, Ben, for the awesome presentation and insight. If anyone has any questions, we'd be happy to answer them now. Please submit those via the question box in the GoToWebinar interface. But first, we'll start with a few questions we actually received in the questions and comments box during registration for this webinar. The first of which is from Janet, who asks or says, we have an online community for both members and non-members. We just added about 700 people to this community for our free virtual meeting, but now what are the next steps? How do we engage them next?
Yeah, I mean, there's certainly a lot of different strategies around that. I think that content is your best friend, right? I think that if you can peel off some of that members only content, right, and put it into your non-members group and say, hey, by the way, these are the types of things that we're talking about over here. You don't have access to this VIP room, but we're going to bring you, a free drink out of VIP, right? So let's, you can share in the good life with us a little bit. I think that the opportunity to open up your content, not just your collaboration that goes on amongst members, but your actual content, and get some of that back in front of your non-members and keep pulling them in. And that way is, I could go on with other strategies, but good for you, first of all, for running a non-member and member community. I'm sure there's a divide somewhere. It sounds like you brought some of those people in for a virtual event. Have that non-members group that's not just your event group, right? Your event that you had members and non-members commingled in, have a non-member group that members also have access to, right? And make it a bit of an open forum for everyone to just have those general discussions, and then little by little share some of that content out. And you can control that, right? You can take a look at that group and see, are members, sharing member-only content, because maybe we don't want them to do that. But we, as the association staff, maybe let's take on, spearheading, putting a little bit of a drip campaign of really valuable content out there that our members have access to. Of course, you want to be conscious of the fact that there's always going to be that one member that says, well, if you're giving this away to everybody for free, why am I a member, right? And so that's going to happen, but let's manage to the rule, not to the exception. And that's something that as consultants, we talk about that all the time. And at the end of the day, if it's going to grow your organization, then your members should be happy about that as well. And so maybe you need to explain that to them. But that's one, I think, one suggestion that I have. Good question.
Cool. So we got another question from Joyce, who asks, I want to take our conference nationwide. What are some ways that Breezio can help with that?
Yeah, so, we talked a little bit about, some of the options that we have in here. I think that taking a virtual conference nationwide or globally, there's just not a big barrier of entry anymore. I think that what you might want to do is potentially section people up in different. I'm trying to think, you put me on the spot here. I don't know. I don't know that there's any barriers, right? I think that the way that we can help is by allowing for that branded kind of microsite within the community to use that group as your event structure, and then have all your sessions listed there. There are no barriers, right? We've got things like live chat built right in. So if somebody in California wants to talk to somebody in New York, and they're both in the same session, they're both in the same piece of content, both in the same material, they can do that very, very easily without even doing it publicly. And so I think that Breezio breaks down some of those walls for people that typically probably wouldn't be at a conference together if geographically they're that spread out. Of course, people do come from across the country for, annual meetings and things like that for national organizations. But I think that Breezio does a really good job of breaking down some of those walls. So hopefully, without being too articulate right now on it, hopefully some of what we shared earlier maybe help you understand how we break down some of those walls to make that scenario a reality for you.
Great. Well, we got a couple more questions so far, but like we said, keep feeling free to add those to the question box. This next one's from Heather, who asks, how do we attract members to our newly formed communities online? And what are the best ways to keep them engaged, communicating, and sharing resources in a format that is new for them?
Yeah, it's really great. And it's interesting too. I think a lot of people, just going to talk about public social media for a second, and let's just talk about the elephant in the room, right? And it's really interesting because a lot of people say we have a Facebook group or we have a LinkedIn group and we don't have the level of control that we want, all these other things, and we just want to get rid of that. Totally disagree, okay? Look, you can't sell advertising on it. You don't own the data. You don't own the content. Zuckerberg's making out, right? Absolutely. However, it is an amazing funnel for you to be able to take some of your pages and some of your content, your community content pages that may potentially be open, and link to them from public social media. Use public social media as an opportunity for those already engaged members, right? And put it in your email newsletter or your event registration confirmations or your renewal confirmations. Put a little banner down there. Hey, come have this conversation with us in our community. And put the link in Facebook, right in your Facebook group, on your Facebook feed, in your Twitter feed, in your LinkedIn group. Embrace that growth in those public social media sites and try to use those as effective funnels of data back into your private community. That is one of the simplest and yet most effective strategies for adoption. And we also have customers, we've partnered with a video production company that when we onboard customers, they have this option to get videos produced that they can do, kind of a series of videos that we worked out with our video production partner, that there are kind of adoption videos that they can embed and use as a sizzle reel at their other events, or they can embed or post up to Facebook or post up to Twitter, or they can put it even in their community to help adoption. Hey, these are the features that we want you to take advantage of when you first get in, so that they add a profile picture if it's not already imported from the AMS or something else, right? So that they add tags, so that they get in and post their first post or reply to someone else's post. But yeah, there's a lot of strategies, I think, going back to Feather and retargeting content. If people made it to some of your content and they've made it to your website, they're there for a reason. This is the time, folks. This is the time to go spend money on social media advertising and spend money on retargeting, because everyone is just sitting at home on their computers right now. I hate to say it, but if they're interested in your content, let's figure out why. Let's be willing to put a little time and energy into figuring out why. What were you doing here? Did I not give you what you want? Is there information you wanted to give me and I didn't make it easy enough for you to give it to me? But yeah, I think going all the way back up to my little monologue that I just gave you guys, public social media is the easiest and really effective funnel for members, because they are proud. They're proud to like you on Facebook. They're proud to be part of your LinkedIn group and all of those other things. Those are fantastic. Keep those going. Keep them thriving. But put links in there back to your private community and start funneling people in.
Great. Well, we're running a little low on time here, but we have one more question from Katie, who asks,
Okay.
we're holding our first virtual event, our biennial convention, in about a week, but our attendance hasn't gone up from the past year's in-person events. What did we miss?
What did you miss? I mean, with some of what I've talked about today, you may have already helped answer that question for you, but if I'm the executive director at your organization and you're coming to me and you're asking that question, I'm asking you, who was involved in marketing this, right? Like, let's not silo the efforts for who we're trying to market to the event department, and they get their, and they send a list to the marketing department and say, this is who we want to go to. Let's engage the private community. Let's make sure that we are taking a look at the content we're offering that may be for specific audiences like members and non-members, or maybe we're not engaging sponsors or incentivizing others. I mean, I think that like affiliate programs and referral programs, I mean, this is the time to reward the behavior that we want, right? Data has never been easier to get and cheaper to get. And so if you need to get creative and put a referral program together that says, look, we want you to help engage other members and non-members that are around your field that you think might want to come in here. For every 6 people you get in with this registration code, your registration is free, or we'll take this much off, or whatever. And so let's get creative in how we are marketing these things. This is not a traditional event. We have the luxury of the fact that anyone in the world can log into our virtual events at this point. So let's not limit it to the marketing channels and marketing ideas that we had in the past. And I think that we can leverage community, both public and private, to do that. So just maybe some thoughts to keep in mind. Before we go, and I'll let you do a wrap up here, but if you want to pull out your phones and click the little QR code here on LinkedIn, I'm going to put my QR code up here, so feel free to scan me. I would love to connect with you on LinkedIn. The email's ben@breezio.com. That is my mobile number. There's a lot of people on this webinar, so don't all call me at once. Kidding. We would love to hear from you. So please scan away with your LinkedIn app. Would love to connect with you. And if there's no more questions, I'll kick it back over to you, Evan, to maybe take us home.
Great. Well, that answered all the questions. So we're going to wrap up today's session now. If you're looking to receive CAE credit for this webinar, ProTech will send confirmation of your attendance in an email later this evening. In that email, you'll also receive a link to the webinar recording, as I mentioned earlier. If you like this webinar, please keep an eye out for our next webinar in August. Information on that we'll be releasing soon, but we're really excited for a panel of guests, including market leaders from industries that include online community, again, business intelligence, and the mobile app spaces as well. So please keep an eye out for that. You can follow us at ProTech Cloud on Twitter or ProTech Associates on LinkedIn, or we'll be, again, announcing these via email and other methods as well. So we just want to thank you all again for attending, and thank Ben for an awesome presentation. And we hope you all have a great afternoon.
Bye, everyone.